I'm joined now by a major player in Nigeria's creative economic space. I'm joined by an award-winning Nollywood producer in the person of Dimbo Atiya. Thank you for joining us on Business Daily today.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You have heard, the plans of the Federal Ministry of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy, such huge plans, I should say. And you've heard, from Nigerians talking about putting the right policies in place to ensure that this indeed, comes to fruition in the next 1 year. But let us hear from you as someone who is a key player in the sector. When you got news of that, what was your reaction?
First of all, I think we need to give kudos to the government for setting up a creative economy ministry and having the minister oversee that, which in his own simple way says somebody is serious about the creative economy in Nigeria. So that is, kudos to the government for doing that. I wish that the 100 billion they're trying to generate is what they're going to invest first in the industry, because it's very key that we look into how we're going to grow the industry before we begin to reap from it. Now, there's nothing wrong in having plans of how they're going to, but it just comes off as, oh, we want to take, even though there are issues I've read, briefly, it came out on Wednesday, haven't really, gone into it that, but then it's pretty much the basic infrastructure. We want to put this in place, we want to do that. But I wish that we were talking about how much is going to go into that, because for the longest time, those of us in the creative space have always talked about these things to be put in place. We need to understand. I think that for me, even though they say these are statistics, I think that the industry is even bigger than what we are talking about in terms of what it generates, in terms of the contribution to the GDP. And I know that for one time I was in the minister's office, and one of the things that I said is that we need to have a data management system where we know for certain, for fact, that this is what the creative industry in Nigeria is generating or what we're putting into it, and I feel that that is a starting point for all of this. Okay, the Nigerian Statistics Bureau, I think that's what they call it, they may have the statistics, but we feel that there should be some sort of independent out of the government setup where we get to understand exactly how much, because truly investors talk numbers. As a creative entrepreneur, if I go out to look for funding, I am speaking numbers. And unless these numbers can be verified, unless we can see them in tangible forms, we're going to tank. But I said, the effort is appreciated, that we're trying to do something about the creative economy. And there's a target to get 100 billion, which is fine. But can we have also the conversation about how much is going to go into making sure that the plan is going to be executed well, so that those of us who are in the creative space can easily say, oh, we're benefiting from this thing, and so giving back, because of course it's going to be through taxing and every other thing that you're going to do. I'm comfortable in paying my taxes, but I want to be in the position where I'm able to generate and create in the most comfortable environment and in the most comfortable economy that will help me, so that this 100 billion we can generate, and we can even generate more. But we must have the conversation first about how much is going into creating, all the infrastructure that they've stated in the plan itself.
Okay, before we even go to, future plans, I would like for us to also touch on the current, state of Nigeria's creative industry, because you've made some very valid points there. But if I gave to you a canvas now and I said you should paint a picture depicting, the current state of Nigeria's creative industry, what would you paint?
It is a self-funded industry right now. Almost everybody in the space is self-funding. Of course, there are efforts where government and the private sector is trying to put in some sort of investment, but a lot of the monies or a lot of the effort that has been put into film production, music production, the skits that these guys do, a lot of the arts, fashion and design, almost everybody, we're putting in personal monies into this thing. So first of all, it is a struggling economy for us as creatives. We are just, trying to survive every day. We are limited in terms of what we're putting in and what we can create. And don't get me wrong, we can do amazing things in this country, but we're limited because economically we're stifled. So one of the things that we must understand is that if the creative industry must move forward, we need to have a lot of other investments coming in from both government, coming in from the private sector, coming in from the international sector also. Of course, the government is making the effort. I know that the office of the special assistant to the vice president on the creative economy, they've been running around with a project with, I hope it's okay to call names, with Providence Bank and providing funding for filmmakers. And they're also looking into other aspects of the economy. Now that is, coming. And until those are fully implemented, we will say that the economy is still running on private pockets. And that can't go far. It's not big enough. It's not strong enough. We're not competing on a global scale yet because we're limited by the resources that we have. So, if you allow me, I'll sum it by saying that we're crawling for now, and we hope that we'll walk soon and start running and fly very soon.
Indeed. Like you've rightly stated, the right investment in the sector is very, very important. But let's go now on a short break. When we return, the conversation continues, and my guest, Dimbo Atiya, an award-winning Nollywood producer, is still with me, so do stay. And you are still watching Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust TV. And just before the break, we started a conversation on the government's very huge plan for, the Nigerian creative industry. And like I stated earlier, the Ministry of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy has unveiled plans to generate $100 billion in the next 1 year and create over 2 million jobs for Nigerians in the creative economy. And I still have my guest here with me. He is Dimbo Atiya, an award-winning Nollywood producer. Thank you again for coming on the program today.
Pleasure to be here.
So we had, started conversations around your thoughts regarding these very huge plans, I must say. But then one thing you said was that the sector even has the potential of, doing more than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you say that, what exactly do you mean?
So in terms of the capacity of the creative space, there's so much that we can. Nigerians are ordinarily very brilliant people. And imagine when you invest in developing that brilliance, then you have the kind of manpower that you need to drive the sector itself. So that sort of investment, we do not have enough. For example, I can count at the tip of my finger the number of film schools that we have in this country. That is not enough for a 200 and something million population. Imagine if we had more. Imagine if we had, I can't for this moment remember if we have any music school in this country, apart from music departments in the universities. We're talking about proper investments in music schools. This is the problem. I mean, if we're going to put and we're going to get to this place where we want to go to with the plan, then capacity building is the first place that we look out for. And then technically, we are limited technically. And if we invest in this thing, I promise you, nothing that we use technically in this industry is manufactured in this country. Nothing. Down to hard drives,
well,
consumables.
Well, I should say that this should be music to your ears then, because the minister actually, highlighted 4 pillars that, the ministry would be focusing on, from technology to infrastructure to funding and international culture promotion. But let's hear your thoughts on all of these pillars, and what are the most critical pillars for you?
So it brings me back to the whole idea of we should be talking about the investment in these 4 critical sectors. First of all, let us know what are the nitty-gritties of what we're going to do. For example, when you talk about the technical aspect of this, like I was saying, nothing that we use technically in the creative space is produced in this country. So we should start having the conversation about waiving taxes or duties on the things that we import technically. I bet you everything that you bought to set up these studios were paid for heavily in terms of the import duties to import this equipment. Imagine if you had waivers on them. That cuts down your cost. It helps you to put the money into other things. We should be having that conversation. When you're talking about the infrastructure that we need, broadband infrastructure is very important that we have the conversation about consuming data, consuming the internet space. Let's talk about it, because we use these things daily. These are things that we consume daily. Let's not forget about electricity. That also has to improve. As a filmmaker and somebody who runs a production house, I know the cost that we use in terms of running diesel generators just to make sure that we're doing edits and we're doing everything. If we cut down on that, we're able to put these things in place. Then we are now chunking out more. Then it's easy to tax us. Then it's easy to say, oh, you've generated more because we've cut down these things for you. So it's laudable that they've structured this for, part of this thing, the cultural aspect of it, that we're going to export out. We've been doing that, and we're going to continue to do that. We just need to do more. I mean, I was just having a conversation with some of your colleagues just now, that some of the stories that we need to be telling, we're not telling them because capacity-wise, we're not able to do them. For example, if I wanted to tell the story about the Civil War, it means me recreating those periods and those times. That's budget that we're talking about that I do not have as a filmmaker. So I'd rather do a room and parlor film where it is just me and a few actors and we tell this compelling story. You enjoy it, that's fine. But we're not pushing the boundaries. But we can do these things because Nigerians are capable. Nigerians can do it. So while I applaud what they're trying to do, and like I said, I'm going to read details of this thing to see where the investment is coming from and making sure that we have an economy that works for us first. Because then it's easy for me to say, oh, I'm contributing to this 100 billion that you people are trying to raise in the next how many years? Because it's important that I'm able to create wealth first. So that's how I see it.
Okay. And part of that also, involves capacity building, like you've already mentioned, because she also did say that the ministry does plan to, create about 2 million jobs in the next 1 year. And you've hammered on the need for capacity building, which I believe are quite intertwined. So I would like for you to speak regarding that. How much is in that sector regarding, youth unemployment has been a major problem. Youth being engaged in social vices just because we are unable to meet employment needs as a nation. So I'd like for you to speak regarding, how the creative industry can serve as a major employer of labor in Nigeria.
One of the things that you must understand, that apart from governance, one of the most effective and constant employer of labor is the creative space. I give you an example. During the pandemic, if there was a sector that was very, very, very active in that period, was the creative sector.
I remember everyone going on social media.
We had to innovate in our homes.
And creating content.
Absolutely. It's the only reason why Pastor Jerry Eze right now is the biggest YouTuber in Nigeria. Because he started the prayer something, I'm just giving an example. And there's so many content creators that actually started from their bedrooms during the pandemic lockdown. So it is a sector that continues to work. No matter how bad it gets, the creative sector does not fold back because we have to create. In the hardest of times that we've gone through in this country in terms of the economies and whatever they can imagine, the disruption, whether it is man-made or natural, whatever it is, the creative space has always survived. So what that means is that it is a sector that wants to keep going. And unless we invest and we keep putting into it, it will just be where it is for the sake of, we'll just survive in terms of saying it the way it's supposed to be. So back to it, capacity building. We have to keep pumping in people into it. Right now, there is a limit, or there's a shortage of hands in the industry, because you will go on a production and you're looking for crew and you can't find capable hands.
So is there a shortage in crew and not in cast at this point?
But even the cast.
Because it looks as though everyone is an actress or an actor now.
Yeah, but we're circulating. But then the issue also is that I wish that most of these actors had some form of training. I wish that they had an acting class or acting school they could go to. But then it's limited. The ones that are available, you have to go through all the process. I know the film school in Jos, which I'm a former student of, it's a proper institution where you have to apply for, We're looking for ideas where you can walk into an acting school for a week or 3 and get the basics, or get, detailed whatever, and come out and be, Right now what we do is, as long as a makeup will stick in your face, you're an actress as far as they're concerned. That's what is happening these days. As long as you're able to remember your lines, you're an actor. That's what we do these days. So we get to manage with what we have. And if you look at it, we're circulating the same actors every day. Why? Because we're not able to chunk out new ones. I mean, we give it to people like Ruth Kadiri, those in the YouTube space who are really bringing up new actors. I give it to her. It's something that must be commended. But it's not enough. We also need to be able to put in place. So if the ministry is also looking at this, you say to yourself, okay, can we have pop-up schools, acting schools? In a year, let's do 100 pop-up acting classes. So we're doing cities, find some of the best hands in this industry. It won't cost you anything. The thing is that once people are exposed to the basics of it, they get it and they can really run with it. If you have 100 people sit down in a pop-up acting class, I bet you'll find 5 who will run with it. And then that's 5 introduced into the industry. If we're talking about crew hands, we need people to understand that the discipline of working behind the scene is not because, you're not seen, so you do whatever you want. No, everybody must understand. There are a lot of people who do not understand what their work brief is about. You say, you're a production manager, probably doesn't have an understanding. He doesn't know that it's production and manager. Okay, no, Allah, let's be going anyhow. But then there's a definition to that. These are the basics. But other than that also, we need to also make sure that whatever we're putting out there is done professionally, so that those who are looking at us from outside will say, let's go to Nigeria and do a production. And they're looking for a proper production manager, or they're looking for a proper art director, or they're looking for a proper producer who global standards are things that he knows. They're not teaching you anything. They're coming and they know what you're doing. You're breaking down things and you're getting it done. We need to get that. Don't get me wrong. We have people like that, but it's limited. We need more. This space is big. The industry is massive. We can put in so much and chunk out a lot, but we're doing little.
You talked about the need for proper producers, proper actors.
Yes.
And what crosses my mind is, are you in any way trying to say that these people are expected to have some sort of formal training before they are called proper producers?
Absolutely.
I mean,
when you have a skill, it has to be refined. I mean, there are people who can really memorize lines but really do not know how to emote with those lines. So it's a thing, it's a skill. Acting is a skill. It's not just something that you're born with, you have the idea of how to be able to move your hands and move and remember lines, but then there's something about how you emote when you're performing.
So formal trainings are important.
It's very, very, very important. Nobody should tell you, you were born from your mother's stomach and you are a born artist and actor. No. There is a formality to it. There is a creative process to being the best. And if you do not apply it, I bet you there is no Hollywood actor that stands and would not have told you that they've been to an acting class. It's very key. It's very important that there's some form of learning that you get. So for all the actors out there who are looking at me right now, the idea is that you can be better than where you are if only you apply the better training. There's nothing wrong in seeking it. But you see, we don't, to be honest. I mean, like I said, film school in Jos, Deliok Academy and Pencil, something, PEFA. Those are the only ones I can remember. Hardly do we have any. How many do we have in this town? In Abuja here, I'm not sure I know any. Those are the issues. So we must be able to capacity building. It's important. It doesn't have to be a formal setup. it can just be a training. It can just be a session where people walk in and they get the basic skills of this thing. It's very, very, very important.
Well said.
Yeah.
But I must commend the resilience of, the sector. Somehow
absolutely.
you guys just find a way to
We
have
find a
things
way.
going despite.
The show must go on, they say.
And I love that. I love that. But let's speak regarding these huge plans, of course, that have been unveiled. How can creatives, take advantage of the opportunity that these present to the sector?
I think first of all, we need to create talking groups. We need to have a conversation. We need to break it down. We need to sit down and have a conversation about how this is going to benefit us. I belong to a film group called FIMIC, and I know that we're going to have a big conversation about this thing in the group. I mean, if there's so many other groups, creative groups out there, I urge that we sit down and look into these papers, because then we now start asking questions. Okay, this you say you're going to do, how are we going to arrive at getting this? Because we're interested in making sure that it works. We want to help you because we want it to work. I promise you, every creative in this country wants everything to work so that we can get things done right, because this is the only thing that we know how to do. This is the thing that we've invested our lives in. These are the things that we wake up every day, and we want that things work very well for us. So the first thing that we will do is have conversations in our little groups. Then we begin to ask questions, because it's an idea, it's out there, but somebody has to probe it. We need to sit down and probe, and we need to have answers, and the government must be transparent in letting us know how they intend to achieve all of this, so that we are, we sit down and we say, okay, this 100 billion they're looking for is justified. If this is done, we will get there and even more. We guarantee that we can do more. So everybody who wants this to work better must look into this thing. We must start asking questions, and we must act on whatever it is that is there. Those who are going to implement this thing must be honest and genuine about implementing this and making sure it works, because thousands and thousands of people depend on this industry every day for their livelihood, for their survival, and for the survival of the nation. Because I promise you, there are people who go back home and all they want to do is watch a Nigerian film or listen to a Nigerian jam, or just style. We're helping in keeping people sane. That is the issue. We must continue to do that, and everywhere globally. And for us also, we need to begin to export Nigeria. It is key and it is important that they get to see more that we can. Afrobeat is doing amazingly well right now. Nollywood has done well, but it has to also go into the places where, we're challenging people for the Oscars. It's very important that we're doing that we're going to the Golden Globes, or we're going to the Cannes Film Festivals or the BAFTAs, and we're making inroads and we're succeeding just like Afrobeat is doing. So then we should do more, and the only way we can do is sit down with government and agree on how these things can be implemented, and then we help them to implement it. The other problem is that when these things are being put in place, we always have a way of self-sabotaging ourselves. It's very important also that we understand that if we do this right, future generations down the line won't have to worry about issues like this. I wish that long time ago, some people had done things properly. Some of us who are coming up now won't have to be facing this and won't have to be having this conversation, because everything will be moving smoothly. So I am somebody who is calling on those who are in this industry that can help the minister, her team, the government in making sure these things are implemented for the future of
what sort of collaborations are you calling for, between the government and, people that are key players in this sector like yourself?
I would think that they sat down with industry professionals to come up with this agenda. I would think so, because I wasn't aware of what was happening. Maybe it's because I'm ignorant of the whole thing. They probably have people from the industry who sat down with them to do this, but they need to engage more. It's very important.
What sort of engagement?
We need to have those, like I said. So it's not just about bringing out the paper. It's about going around to find out, do you people understand what's happening? Can we have those one-on-one meetings with the minister or her team to say, okay, now that we implemented this, we're moving forward. This is the thing. And then, of course, the transparency of it. The information has to be out there, because truly we can't do much without their collaboration in this. If they want to close themselves in and want to do it themselves, that's fine. We can't force it. But if they're saying, okay, we've had these initial conversations, let's sit down more. I am interested in sitting down more with the team to say, okay, can we look into this thing and how we move forward? It's very important. How does it help me? Then I translate it to those who would not have the opportunity to have this conversation. It has to be a constant review of this thing, and that review can only happen if you're talking to the people who it affects. So there must be that machinery, or there must be that setup where constantly. They're looking into the review of, oh, we've started this. Have you guys felt it? Are you feeling it? Those of you who have not seen it, this is how you can access it. The thing about this country is that we're very secretive about most of these things. You will not hear about it until it finishes. And then, oh, something like this happened.
Well, good thing we're hearing about it and talking
that's
about it now.
Conversation,
yes.
which is something that should be applauded. And I feel like it's going to go great if they decide to, constantly have a conversation with those of us who are in this industry, and that way it's easy to be implemented and we don't have those issues coming forward again.
Well said. You have spoken regarding most of the challenges that you face, from you talked about capacity building, you talked about collaboration, talked about investment, which you've hammered on multiple times now. But I'd like for us to talk regarding, the intellectual property monetization, which has been a concern that has come up a lot, within the Nigerian creative space. So let's talk regarding that. Is that a challenge? And what, in your opinion, can be done, around intellectual property enforcement in Nigeria?
The biggest problem that the intellectual property structures face in Nigeria is the slow dispensation of justice. I put it in the legal system, in the judiciary, because the first problem that you're having anywhere in the world when it comes to intellectual property rights is defining your rights and insisting on your rights. Somebody infringes on your right, you should be able to go to a proper court of law and get instant justice. I give an example. As a filmmaker, I sign contracts with actors and the crew. Now, in the middle of the production, we get to 50% of this production and an actor starts acting up, or I as a producer put him in a position where he starts acting up and everything goes haywire. The best thing that's going to happen, I am not in any way trying to invoke what was in the contract. You know why? Because if that falls apart, my production falls apart. What that means is that I don't move forward, I don't move backward. I am stuck and I have to finish filming because it's money every day if I don't shoot. So what happens? We go into beggy, I beg, everybody manages until we're done and we move ahead.
Okay, you beg the actors to continue with it.
Absolutely. You have to, because if the man says he's not going to do, what are you going to do? Sue him? Do you know how long it's going to take you to have justice on that matter? Now, you've already invested him into 50% of your production and there's an issue and he says, I can't continue. What do? You start all over. That's not possible. Unless you have the money, which 99.9% of producers in Nigeria do not have money to recast and restart. So the best thing to do is, even if you're on your right and the man is, that you're not in any way starting a legal fight with this talent, because it's going to waste your time, it's going to waste your resources. Why? Because the dispensation of justice when it comes to intellectual property and the creative rights of Nigerians is slow. Not that we don't get it. There's always a judgment at the end of the day, but it's just a process. Imagine if we could walk into a tribunal and in 24 or 48 hours, with all the facts on ground, we can get the justice that we need. I will shut down production for 2 days and make a case for this thing and make the actor come back and work what he needs to do. That is the first problem. It's very important that if we put that in place, everybody will behave. This intellectual property will not be a problem. You pirate my product, I walk into a tribunal, and the next thing you're being arrested and you're dealt with, they will stay away from pirating my product. It's very important that once we put this structure in place, there are people who are beginning to set up. There's the lady balancing, sorry, her name is just skipping my head now, who just opened a chamber where she deals with intellectual property. So lawyers are beginning to understand that this is very important and key to a creative economy that is growing every day. But the judiciary must do something about making sure that we have, I know that there is the, the Workers' Tribunal, I can't remember what it's called now. I mean, they need to find a space in there where it says, oh, this is a mobile call. You know how they prosecute people who violate, maybe sanitation laws or traffic laws immediately, instantly. If we can have those type of tribunals and those type of courts where I can walk in and sit down and we solve this matter there and then, that would be nice for the creative industry. Now, when it comes to intellectual property, how you're going to benefit from that, of course, the registration of intellectual properties, the patenting of ideas, we know that these structures are there, but we're not utilizing them. Let it be that it is a seamless process where I can easily come with an idea and I go online and I register it, I get my patent certificate. That way I have the idea with me. It's simple. People must understand all of these things. We put these infrastructures in place. I promise you, people will line up. Those who are waiting for you to create and they steal from you, You sample my music, it's a problem. You take my line without telling me, it's a problem. And then it also brings us to this new whole generation of AI, ChatGPT and the rest. There are people who are running to ChatGPT now to write scripts. Be careful, because you're probably plagiarizing somebody's work, because what that AI would do is go around and just find ideas and put it together. You might just have a line that somebody had written for another production and you think that you're writing it for yourself. It becomes a problem. That also needs to be regulated in terms of, oh, you're going to use ChatGPT, there's nothing wrong with it. But make sure that you're not plagiarizing people's work. So it's key that these infrastructures and these things are put in place. That way it's easier for intellectual property rights to be enjoyed by people around the world or in Nigeria who are creating it.
Okay, unfortunately, our time is fast spent. But in 1 minute before we go, what are your expectations for the economy in the next, I'll say, 5 years?
I think that with the proactive way that they are going about, the creative industry and the creative economy and trying to put in place things, I pray and I hope that these things are implemented. And in the next 5 years, we're definitely going to see a more robust, a more agile, a more, how do I put it, an industry that wants to do more. We'll see people daring things. We'll see people coming up with ideas. We'll see storylines and we see music that really follow the science of music making. We will see stories that tell the heroics of our people when it comes to our leaders, when it comes to, the things that people do on the streets. We should be able to tell that. We should be able to historically go back and say, this was what happened, so that it unites us as a people. It's very important that the creative industry works. It's very important that we function. And it's very important that we're encouraged to be able to harness and make people realize that this is the only country that we have. Unless we're proud of it, unless we stand up and defend it, through the creative processes and things that we tell, we will not go anywhere. I give an example with Hollywood. I mean, I've been to Hollywood Boulevard. It's probably one of the dirtiest places, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the street. But Hollywood will never, they will tell you a story on Hollywood Boulevard and it's the most beautiful place you've ever seen. The American flag is always the pride of Americans. If we're pushed to tell these stories about our pride, about our traditions, our culture, the things that we are very good at, I promise you we'll be a better nation in the next 5 years.
Well said. It is important that the creative industry works. It is important that the creative industry, or that creatives are encouraged, and it is important that the sector functions. And those are the words of my guest, Dimbo Atiya, who is a Nollywood producer. Thank you for the very insightful and engaging conversation today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Yeah. This is where we say our goodbyes on today's edition of Business Daily. But keep the conversation going across all the social media platforms, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and of course on Instagram, and let's engage with each other on the recent development within Nigeria's creative industry as the federal government unveils plans to create $100 billion annually. My name is Chiamaka Enendu. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.